The House of Commons of Canada is a component of the Parliament of Canada, along with the Sovereign and the Senate. The House of Commons chamber is located in the centre block of the Parliament buildings on Parliament Hill in Ottawa. The House of Commons is a democratically elected body whose members are known as Members of Parliament. There were 308 members in the last Parliament, but that number has risen to 338 following the election on Monday, October 19, 2015. Members are elected by simple plurality in each of the country's electoral districts, which are colloquially known as ridings. MPs may hold office until Parliament is dissolved and serve for constitutionally limited terms of up to 5 years after an election. Historically, however, terms have ended before their expiry, and the sitting government has typically dissolved Parliament within 4 years of an election according to a long-standing convention. In any case, an active Parliament now limits each term to 4 years. Seats in the House of Commons are distributed roughly in proportion to the population of each province and territory. However, some ridings are more populous than others, and the Canadian Constitution contains some special provisions regarding provincial representation. As a result, there is some interprovincial and regional malapportionment relative to population. The House of Commons was established in 1867 when the British North America Act, now called the Constitution Act, 1867, created the Dominion of Canada, and was modelled on the British House of Commons. The lower of the two houses making up the Parliament, the House of Commons in practice holds far more power than the upper house, the Senate. Although the approval of both houses is necessary for legislation, the Senate very rarely rejects bills passed by the Commons. Moreover, the Government of Canada is responsible solely to the House of Commons. The Prime Minister stays in office only as long as he or she retains the support, or confidence, of the lower house. Name. The term derives from the Anglo-Norman word communes, referring to the geographic and collective communities of the parliamentary representatives and not the third estate, the commonalty. This distinction is made clear in the official French name of the body, Chambre des Communes. Canada and the United Kingdom remained the only countries to use the name House of Commons for a lower house of Parliament. History. The House of Commons came into existence in 1867 when the British Parliament passed the British North America Act, uniting the province of Canada, Nova Scotia and New Brunswick into a single federation called the Dominion of Canada. The new Parliament of Canada consisted of the Queen, the Senate and the House of Commons. The Parliament of Canada was based on the Westminster model. Unlike the Parliament of the United Kingdom, the powers of the Parliament of Canada were limited in that other powers were assigned exclusively to the provincial legislatures. The Parliament of Canada also remained subordinate to the British Parliament, the supreme legislative authority for the entire British Empire. Greater autonomy was granted by the Statute of Westminster 1931, after which new acts of the British Parliament did not apply to Canada, with some exceptions. These exceptions were removed by the Canada Act 1982. From 1867, the Commons met in the same chamber until it was destroyed by fire in 1916. It relocated to the amphitheatre of the Victoria Memorial Museum, what is today the Canadian Museum of Nature, where it met until 1922. Since then, the Commons has sat in its current chamber. Members and electoral districts. The House of Commons comprises 338 members, each of whom represents a single electoral district. The Constitution specifies a basic minimum of 295 electoral districts, but additional seats are allocated according to various clauses. Seats are distributed among the provinces in proportion to population, as determined by each decennial census, subject to the following exceptions made by the Constitution. Firstly, the senatorial clause guarantees that each province will have at least as many MPs as senators. Secondly, the grandfather clause guarantees each province has at least as many members of parliament now as it had in 1985. As a result of these clauses, smaller provinces and provinces that have experienced a relative decline in population have become overrepresented in the House. Ontario, British Columbia, and Alberta are underrepresented in proportion to the populations, while the other 7 provinces are overrepresented. Boundary commissions appointed by the federal government for each province have the task of drawing the boundaries of the electoral districts in each province. Territorial representation is independent of population. Each territory is entitled to only 1 seat. The calculation for the provinces is done with a base of 279 seats. The total population of the provinces is then divided by 279 to equal the electoral quotient. The population of the province is then divided by the electoral quotient to equal the base provincial seat allocation. The special clauses are then applied to increase the number of seats for certain provinces, bringing the total number of seats to 338. The last redistribution of seats occurred subsequent to the 2011 census. The Fair Representation Act was passed and given royal assent on the 16th of December 2011, and effectively allocated 15 additional seats to Ontario, 6 new seats each to Alberta and British Columbia, and 3 more to Quebec. The following tables summarize representation in the House of Commons by province and territory. Elections. General elections occur whenever Parliament is dissolved by the Governor-General on the Queen's behalf. The timing of the dissolution has historically been chosen by the Prime Minister. The Constitution Act 1867 provides that a Parliament last no longer than 5 years. Canadian election law requires that elections must be held on the 3rd Monday in October in 4th year after the last election, subject to the discretion of the Crown. Campaigns must be at least 36 days long. Candidates are usually nominated by political parties. It is possible for a candidate to run independently, although it is rare for such a candidate to win. Most successful independent candidates have been incumbents who were expelled from the political parties or who failed to win the party's nomination. The most recent exception to this was the election of André Arthur in a Quebec City district in 2006. Most Canadian candidates are chosen in meetings called by the party's local association. In practice, the candidate who signs up the most local party members generally wins the nomination. To run for a seat in the House, candidates must file nomination papers bearing the signatures of at least 50 or 100 constituents. Each electoral district returns 1 member using the first-past-the-post electoral system, under which the candidate with a plurality of votes wins. To vote, one must be a citizen of Canada and at least 18 years of age. Once elected, a member of Parliament normally continues to serve until the next dissolution of Parliament. If a member dies, resigns, or ceases to be qualified, his or her seat falls vacant. It is also possible for the House of Commons to expel a member, but this power is only exercised when the member has engaged in serious misconduct or criminal activity. Formerly, MPs appointed to cabinet were expected to resign the seats, though this practice ceased in 1931. In each case, a vacancy may be filled by a by-election in the appropriate electoral district. The first-past-the-post system is used in by-elections, as in general elections. Perquisites. The term Member of Parliament is usually used only to refer to members of the House of Commons, even though the Senate is also a part of Parliament. Members of the House of Commons may use the post-nominal letters MP. The annual salary of each Member of Parliament is, as of 2015, $167,400. Members may receive additional salaries in right of other offices they hold. MPs rank immediately below senators in the order of precedence. Qualifications. Under the Constitution Act 1867, Parliament is empowered to determine the qualifications of members of the House of Commons. The present qualifications are outlined in the Canada Elections Act, which was passed in 2000. Under the Act, an individual must be an eligible voter as of the day on which he or she is nominated in order to stand as a candidate. Thus, minors and individuals who are not citizens of Canada are not allowed to become candidates. The Canada Elections Act also bars prisoners from standing for election. Moreover, individuals found guilty of election-related crimes are prohibited from becoming members for 5 years after conviction. The Act also prohibits certain officials from standing for the House of Commons. These officers include members of provincial and territorial legislatures, sheriffs, crown attorneys, most judges, and election officers. The Chief Electoral Officer and Assistant Chief Electoral Officer are prohibited not only from standing as candidates, but also from voting. Finally, under the Constitution Act 1867, a member of the Senate may not also become a member of the House of Commons, and MPs must give up their seats when appointed to the Senate or the bench. Offices and symbols. The House of Commons elects a presiding officer, known as the Speaker, at the beginning of each new parliamentary term, and also whenever a vacancy arises. Formerly, the Prime Minister determined who would serve as Speaker. Although the House voted on the matter, the voting constituted a mere formality. Since 1986, however, the House has elected speakers by secret ballot. The Speaker is assisted by a Deputy Speaker, who also holds the title of Chair of Committees of the Whole. Two other deputies, the Deputy Chair of Committees of the Whole and the Assistant Deputy Chair of Committees of the Whole, also preside. The duties of presiding over the House are divided between the 4 officers aforementioned. However, the Speaker usually presides over a question period and over the most important debates. The Speaker controls debates by calling on members to speak. If a member believes that a rule has been breached, he or she may raise a point of order, on which the Speaker makes a ruling that is not subject to any debate or appeal. The Speaker may also discipline members who fail to observe the rules of the House. When presiding, the Speaker must remain impartial. The Speaker also oversees the administration of the House and is chair of the Board of Internal Economy, the governing body for the House of Commons. The current Speaker of the House of Commons is the Honourable Jeff Regan MP, the member of the government responsible for steering legislation through the House is Leader of the Government in the House of Commons. The Government House Leader is a Member of Parliament selected by the Prime Minister and holds cabinet rank. The Leader manages the schedule of the House of Commons, and attempts to secure the opposition's support for the government's legislative agenda. Officers of the House who are not members include the Clerk of the House of Commons, the Deputy Clerk, the Law Clerk and Parliamentary Counsel, and several other clerks. These offices advise the Speaker and members on the rules and procedure of the House in addition to exercising senior management functions within the House administration. Another important officer is the Sergeant-at-Arms, whose duties include the maintenance of order and security on the House's premises and inside the buildings of the parliamentary precinct. The sergeant-at-arms also carries the ceremonial mace, a symbol of the authority of the Crown and of the House of Commons, into the House each sitting. The House is also staffed by parliamentary pages, who carry messages to the members in the chamber and otherwise provide assistance to the House. The Commons mace has the shape of a medieval mace which was used as a weapon, but in brass and ornate in detail and symbolism. At its bulbous head is a replica of the imperial state crown. The choice of this crown for the Commons mace differentiates it from the Senate's mace, which has St. Edward's crown at its apex. The Commons mace is placed upon the table in front of the Speaker for the duration of the sitting, with the crown pointing towards the Prime Minister and the other cabinet ministers, who advise the Queen and Governor-General and are accountable to this chamber. Carved above the Speaker's chair of the Royal Arms of the United Kingdom. This chair was a gift from the United Kingdom branch of the Empire Parliamentary Association in 1921, to replace the chair that was destroyed by the fire of 1916, and was an exact replica of the chair in the British House of Commons at the time. These arms at its apex were considered the royal arms for general purposes throughout the British Empire at the time. Since 1931, however, Canada has been an independent country, and the Canadian coat of arms are now understood to be the royal arms of the Queen of Canada. Escutcheons of the same original royal arms can be found on each side of the Speaker's chair, held by a lion and a unicorn, in response to a campaign by Bruce Hicks for the Canadianization of symbols of royal authority and to advance the identity of parliamentary institutions, a proposal that was supported by Speakers of the House of Commons John Fraser and Gilbert Parent. A Commons committee was eventually struck following a motion by MP Derek Lee, before which Hicks and Robert Watt, the first Chief Herald of Canada, were called as the only two expert witnesses, though Senator Sir Joyal joined the committee on behalf of the Senate. Commons Speaker Peter Milliken then asked the Governor-General to authorize such a symbol. In the United Kingdom, the House of Commons and the House of Lords used the royal badge of the portcullis, in green and red respectively, to represent those institutions and to distinguish them from the government, the courts and the monarch. The Canadian Heraldic Authority on 15 April 2008 granted the House of Commons, as an institution, a badge consisting of the chamber's mace behind the escutcheon of the shield of the Royal Arms of Canada. Procedure. Like the Senate, the House of Commons meets on Parliament Hill in Ottawa. The Commons chamber is modestly decorated in green, in contrast with the more lavishly furnished red Senate chamber. The arrangement is similar to the design of the chamber of the British House of Commons. The seats are evenly divided between both sides of the chamber, 3 sword lengths apart. The Speaker's chair is at the north end of the chamber. In front of it is the table of the House, on which rests the ceremonial mace. Various table officers, clerks and other officials sit at the table, ready to advise the Speaker on procedure when necessary. Members of the government sit on the benches on the Speaker's right, while members of the opposition occupy the benches on the Speaker's left. Government ministers sit around the Prime Minister, who is traditionally assigned the 11th seat in the front row on the Speaker's right-hand side. The leader of the official opposition sits directly across from the Prime Minister and is surrounded by a shadow cabinet, or critics for the government portfolios. The remaining party leaders sit in the front rows. Other members of Parliament who do not hold any kind of special responsibilities are known as backbenchers. The House usually sits Monday to Friday from late January to mid-June and from mid-September to mid-December according to an established calendar, though it can modify the calendar if additional or fewer sittings are required. During these periods, the House generally rises for 1 week per month to allow members to work in their constituencies. Sittings at the House are open to the public. Proceedings are broadcast over cable and satellite television and over live streaming video on the Internet by CPAC, owned by a consortium of Canadian cable companies. They are also recorded in text form in print and online in Hansard, the official report of parliamentary debates. The Constitution Act 1867 establishes a quorum of 20 members for the House of Commons. Any member may request a count of the members to ascertain the presence of a quorum. If, however, the Speaker feels that at least 20 members are clearly in the chamber, he or she may deny the request. If a count does occur and reveals that fewer than 20 members are present, the Speaker orders bells to be rung, so that other members on the parliamentary precincts may come to the chamber. If, after a second count, a quorum is still not present, the Speaker must adjourn the House until the next sitting day. During debates, members may only speak if called upon by the Speaker. The Speaker is responsible for ensuring that members of all parties have an opportunity to be heard. The Speaker also determines who is to speak if 2 or more members rise simultaneously, but his or her decision may be altered by the House. Motions must be moved by one member and seconded by another before debate may begin. Some motions, however, are non-debatable. Speeches may be made in either of Canada's official languages, and it is customary for bilingual members of Parliament to respond to these in the same language they were made in. It is common for bilingual MPs to switch between the languages during speeches. Members must address the speeches to the presiding officer, not the House, using the words Mr. Speaker or Madam Speaker. Other members must be referred to in the third person. Traditionally, members do not refer to each other by name, but by constituency or cabinet post, using forms such as the Honourable Member for or the Minister of. Members' names are routinely used only during roll call votes, in which members stand and are named to have the vote recorded. At that point they are referred to by title and last name, except where members have the same or similar last names, at which point they would be listed by the name and riding. No member may speak more than once on the same question. Moreover, tediously repetitive or irrelevant remarks are prohibited, as are written remarks read into the record. The presiding officer may order a member making such remarks to cease speaking. The standing orders of the House of Commons prescribe time limits for speeches. The limits depend on the nature of the motion, but are most commonly between 10 and 20 minutes. However, under certain circumstances, the Prime Minister, the leader of the official opposition, and others are entitled to make longer speeches. Debate may be further restricted by the passage of time allocation motions. Alternatively, the House may end debate more quickly by passing a motion for closure. When the debate concludes, the motion in question is put to a vote. The House first votes by voice vote. The presiding officer puts the question, and members respond either yea or nay. The presiding officer then announces the result of the voice vote, but 5 or more members may challenge his or her assessment, thereby forcing a recorded vote. First, members in favor of the motion rise, so that the clerks may record the names and votes. Then, the same procedure is repeated for members who oppose the motion. There is no formal means for recording an abstention, though a member may informally abstain by remaining seated during the division. If there is an equality of votes, the Speaker has a casting vote. The outcome of most votes is largely known beforehand, since political parties normally instruct members on how to vote. A party normally entrusts some members of Parliament, known as whips, with the task of ensuring that all party members vote as desired. Members of Parliament do not tend to vote against such instructions, since those who do so are unlikely to reach high political ranks in the parties. Errant members may be deselected as official party candidates during future elections, and, in serious cases, may be expelled from the parties outright. Thus, the independence of members of Parliament tends to be extremely low, and backbench rebellions by members discontent with the party's policies are rare. In some circumstances, however, parties announce free votes, allowing members to vote as they please. This may be done on moral issues and is routine on private members' bills. Committees. The Parliament of Canada uses committees for a variety of purposes. Committees consider bills in detail, and may make amendments. Other committees scrutinize various government agencies and ministries. Potentially, the largest of the Commons committees of the Committees of the Whole, which, as the name suggests, consist of all the members of the House. A Committee of the Whole meets in the chamber of the House, but proceeds under slightly modified rules of debate. Instead of the Speaker, the Chairman, Deputy Chairman, or Assistant Deputy Chairman presides. The House resolves itself into a Committee of the Whole to discuss appropriation bills, and sometimes for other legislation. The House of Commons also has several standing committees, each of which has responsibility for a particular area of government. These committees oversee the relevant government departments, may hold hearings and collect evidence on governmental operations and review departmental spending plans. Standing committees may also consider and amend bills. Standing committees consist of between 16 and 18 members each, and elect their own chairman. Some bills are considered by legislative committees, each of which consists of up to 15 members. The membership of each legislative committee roughly reflects the strength of the parties in the whole House. A legislative committee is appointed on an ad hoc basis to study and amend a specific bill. In addition, the chairman of a legislative committee is not elected by the members of the committee, but is instead appointed by the Speaker, normally from among his deputies. Most bills, however, are referred to standing committees rather than legislative committees. The House may also create ad hoc committees to study matters other than bills. Such committees are known as special committees. Each such body, like a legislative committee, may consist of no more than 15 members. Other committees include joint committees, which include both members of the House of Commons and senators. Such committees may hold hearings and oversee government, but do not revise legislation. Legislative functions. Although legislation may be introduced in either house, most bills originate in the House of Commons. In conformity with the British model, the lower house alone is authorised to originate bills imposing taxes or appropriating public funds. This restriction on the power of the Senate is not merely a matter of convention, but is explicitly stated in the Constitution Act, 1867. Otherwise, the power of the two houses of Parliament is theoretically equal. The approval of each is necessary for a bill's passage. In practice, however, the House of Commons is the dominant chamber of Parliament, with the Senate very rarely exercising its powers in a way that opposes the will of the democratically elected chamber. The last major bill defeated in the Senate came in 2010, when a bill passed by the Commons concerning climate change was rejected in the upper house by a vote. A clause in the Constitution Act, 1867 permits the Governor-General to appoint up to 8 extra senators to resolve a deadlock between the two houses. The clause was invoked only once, in 1990, when Prime Minister Brian Mulroney advised the appointment of an additional 8 senators in order to secure the upper house's approval for the Goods and Services Tax.